go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today to this Education Transformation 2020 presentation, Keeping Online Students Engaged. My name is Kayla Elkin, and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawkes Learning. Our speaker today is Dr. Jacqueline Jensen-Vallon of Lamar University. Dr. Jacqueline Jensen-Vallon has served as Director of the First Year Mathematics Experience at Lamar University since 2017. As part of this work, she is responsible for course design and coordination, as well as training of all instructors of those courses. She is also an Associate Professor of Mathematics and editor of the MAA Focus. We are so excited that Dr. Jensen-Vallon is here to share her experience and insight with us today. We do have a large audience and will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. Joanna Grabert of Hawkes, a course implementation specialist, is also joining us in the background of the webinar today. She is here to help answer questions throughout the webinar, so please enter those into the Q&A as we go, and she will write back to you. If you have any questions for Dr. Jensen-Vallon, we'll save those for the end of the presentation. And on that note, I will hand it over to our presenter. The floor is yours, Dr. Jensen-Vallon.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us today. I will say just a little bit about Lamar University and where we are and what our students are like, although I think our experiences are pretty similar regardless of that at the moment. Lamar is in Beaumont, Texas. We're in Southeast Texas. It's a small regional state school, small by Texas standards, large by lots of place standards. I got in trouble for saying that once because we have about 15,000 students. We have a large population of BIPOC students. And we have a history of having a lot of online courses anyway. So we were in the spring very well situated to have some support when we moved online, which was lovely. However, those of us who were face-to-face were still a little bit, bewildered and overwhelmed transitioning to online like everybody else was. So there we go. The sampling of what we do offer in our online catalog at the moment, for fall, most of our big courses are online. So all of our first year mathematics courses, college algebra, stat, contemporary math, pre-cal, business math, all the co-requisite courses, those will all be online this fall. Many, although not all, of the calculus courses will be online this fall. Many of our instructors are opting to run those hybrid. So they'll meet 1/3, 1/4, 1/5 of their class at different points. We typically run linear algebra differential equations and our calculus-based statistics also online, and several of those sections have also moved to online this fall. So like many of us, we're trying to figure out how do we keep the students engaged? How do we get them to engage with the material in a meaningful way if we're not face-to-face and able to have context, able to necessarily break them into groups or have them come to the board or things like that many of us want to do. So I got some really great advice in the spring from lots of instructors and instructional design people and things like that. One of the big suggestions was to put out a weekly organizational announcement. So at the beginning of your week, whatever that is, Sunday or Monday, list all of the content to be covered, list your course objectives for the week, list any assignments that were due, and any other reminders. Don't forget that you also have to do this other thing that's ongoing. Don't forget that your project will be coming out this week and due next week, things like that. But then it's kind of in one announcement, all in one big chunk. We use Blackboard at Lamar, and so there's the announcement page, and you just I take it from my syllabus, quite honestly. I take it and cut and paste from the syllabus, and any of the course policies they're going to need to know that week, I remind them of. So on weeks when we have an exam or something like that, that course policy gets put right in that announcement as well, so they have access to it right there and they don't have to go look for it. In addition to that one big chunk announcement that I do at the beginning of every week, I also pop up other announcements, and this is to remind them that the course exists if they are forgetting about it maybe, or distracted or busy with other things. In particular, I asked a lot of students in the spring and the summer to email me screenshots of what they were having trouble with. So this summer it was the business math course using a Hawkes product, and I would tell them, they're like, I got stuck on number 3. And I said, can you please screenshot it, send it to me, and then I would take what they had written, I would make a little video about it, and I would post the video as a solution and say something like, if you haven't seen this problem, you've seen something like this problem. This one seems to be stumping many of you. And then I would put up a little announcement. People who are stuck on section 7.3, I put up a couple of videos that might help. I also would frequently post reminders about due dates, like all the time. Don't forget your quiz is due tomorrow. Don't forget the quiz is due at 10 p.m. And especially on exam weeks. They, for some reason, had a lot of trouble with exam deadlines, but less because of me nagging them a lot. The other thing that I really liked and I was really worried about was within Blackboard, we can set up discussion boards. And so I was doing this during the summer. It was a 5-week course. I was doing this twice a week. They would go live on Sunday and on Wednesday, I think. And they had to respond to the prompt. And then they also had a comment on 2 other students' discussion boards posts. And it kind of got them to get to know each other. I had a lot of non-traditional students this summer, and I really loved the way they were helping to keep each other up. They really gave each other pep talks, said you can do it. They gave each other suggestions about where to go for tutoring or how to help each other. They said, why don't you call me? Let's set up a group chat. They did all of these great things to really support each other when they were struggling, and it was really nice. And I really wanted the discussion boards to kind of not just be regurgitated definition, but to have them draw connections or to think about how the content related to their lives. So the first one I used, was this like welcome to the course thing. And I really wanted to ask them kind of for a mathematical biography. What was the last math you had? Do you like math? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? What do you struggle with? But I kind of didn't want them to end up being upset or make them feel negative when we started the course. So I just said, just tell me something about yourself, and tell us as much or as little as you want. So we had people who were like, I have 4, Great Dane dogs. And I was like, fantastic. And then they would come back and they would post pictures of the dogs or their kids or their boyfriend or their car, or I don't know, there were photos all over this discussion board, and it was fantastic. And they had a comment to each other. So there was a lot of, oh, I'm also a mom trying to do this at home. My kids are 3 and 6. Oh, I also have twins. Oh, I have a Pomeranian. I bet he'd like to play with your Great Dane. And it was just super fun. And they kind of just started chatting in a way where they were never live together, and they still had conversations and they still knew each other by name. It probably really helped that I had about 35 students this summer and I didn't have 110. So that's going to come back later. In terms of the mathematical content, I might say something like, we've been focusing on linear equations. Lots of you remember linear equations. What do you remember? Or what did you remember having done them now? What have you relearned? And they would say things like, oh, I always remember y equals mx plus b, but I couldn't remember what m and b were. Now I know that means slope and y-intercept. And they would chat about it, and they would say, hey, I'd forgotten that too. And they would say, oh yeah, once you know the slope, you can also do this other thing over here or whatever. And it really got them to talk about how they remember the content and give each other tips. When we did quadratics, we also did exponentials, we did logarithms, we did a lot of application problems, which were great for discussion prompts. They were things like, okay, so there's a whole bunch of applied formulas in this section. Which one do you think is most important to what you want to do? And they'd be like, oh, profit is the most important. No, revenue is the most important. No, I need to be able to minimize my cost. And they weren't arguing about it, but they were having like real discussion in the discussion sections. And that was really lovely. What would you want to maximize or minimize and why? They were like, I would like to have hit the maximum already of COVID cases in our area so that it can start to go down. And it would let them share a little bit about their lives too. And it was really nice. And I would try to read them. This point will come up again in a few minutes too, but I would try to read their posts as they made them. So I was checking the discussion board 2 or 3 times a day and commenting back to some of them and asking them for extra information or agreeing or asking for more details, saying good job. And I would try to do that and kind of share the love where I commented on lots of different people's posts, ask for more information on a lot of them very early on when I knew they weren't giving me enough. And that became a real time sink, but I think they saw that I was really in there and I was reading them and I was reacting to them, and they were more willing to do that too. The other thing that Joanna had taught us, because she's our rep and she's fantastic, was how to use a lot of the reports and tools. And so in Hawks, there is search by criteria, and you can search for people who haven't been in a lesson in the past 48 hours, haven't been in a lesson in the past week, haven't spent any time in web tests, which is where I was giving my quizzes, who had gotten a 0 on a certain topic. There are lots of ways you can search, and then you can email them, and it comes out as, it looks like an individual email, but you're emailing the whole group at once. And you just say like, hey, just wanted to remind you, I see you haven't gotten to your quiz yet. Don't forget it's due by midnight and it's already 8 p.m. Hope you find time to do it. Let me know if you have questions. I got a lot of students who would write back, because it looks like it's coming directly from me, who would write back and say, I just took the quiz, got 100, thanks for the reminder. Or, you know, just took the quiz, that one was really hard. Can you do some more problems about? And things like that. And they were another way for the students to feel that one-on-one contact. Like the fact that they wrote back meant that they thought they weren't form letters, and they weren't. I composed a new one every time, and made them feel like I was reaching out to them personally. And then the same thing about the web test by test. You can look there and you can send emails to students who haven't finished them. You can send emails to students who did great. So you could say, oh my gosh, everybody who got an 85 or above really crushed this test. And so I'm going to email them and tell them what a good job they did. I might email the people who got less than a 40 or less than a 60 and ask, you know, what else I can do, what other kind of content I can provide. One of my students this summer didn't realize that in Blackboard, I had folders set up for every week. And if you clicked on the folder, it took you to the week's content. And it wasn't until about week 3 that she realized that all the video lessons were inside that folder. She just saw the folder, which was the list of content. And she was using the videos in Hawks and the Learn mode in Hawks, and she was doing okay. She didn't realize I was posting all the supplemental stuff. And so when I emailed her to check in after one of the tests, she was like, where is all this extra stuff? And I was like, oh, let's post a little video about how to get to the extra stuff, and let's post it on the main page so everybody can find it. The other thing that I used the web test by test for was kind of a self-check. You can see the time spent per question per student. You can see the average time spent per question, and you can see how many students missed it or skipped it. And so on their first test this summer, I had one question, how do I say this, which came from section 7.3, but used techniques from 7.2. And so I told them 7.3 wouldn't be on the exam, but I didn't cut the question, and everybody did horribly on that particular problem. I think it freaked them out more than they couldn't do it. And so I was able to see that there were only 3 students out of 36 who got it right, and I could go back and edit the scores to adjust for that question, because I could just see it from an overview. And so it gives you really good data about which topics maybe you need to go back and hit better, which topics you needed to exclude, and whatever kinds of things. It kind of saved my bacon on that one. So one of the fights I think we're all having, kind of internally and externally, probably on your campus and also in your brain, is whether or not to meet synchronously. So in the summer, my course was designed to be asynchronous. It was written as an online course to begin with. It never had a class time. So I'd really thought kind of pretty deeply and talked to a lot of people about how to keep the students involved with discussion boards and email and conversation when I did not have a time where I was going to meet them face to face. Now that meant that I was posting tons of content because there was no time where I had them all together, that I was trying to answer questions for the group or explain a concept for the entire group. So I posted lots and lots and lots of very short videos, 3 to 5 minute videos on very specific topics, so they could pretty easily find what they wanted. I really tried to make sure that if I got especially the same question from more than one student, I posted a little video about it. I think I would probably do slightly less of that, or I would post the videos from our synchronous meetings And so I would maybe not feel like I had to post as many announcements. I wouldn't have to post as many of those short little videos if I had the synchronous meetings happening. And I felt like I spent a ton of time, maybe more time asynchronously, just trying to make sure I was reading everything and keeping up and emailing them when I needed to and responding to their emails as quickly as I could than I would have if we'd had synchronous meetings. I think if we had synchronous meetings, I might say like, oh, I'm going to hold on to these 3 questions that came by email and answer them tomorrow morning when I have the group together. But asynchronously, I felt like since they were working around jobs and working around families and working around all these other obligations, I really wanted to respond to them as quickly as I could. So I would, you know, be sitting in the parking lot, picking up my grocery order, trying to record a video so that they would get the answer as quickly as they could. And so I'm maybe not budgeting my time well, but I think that that's an interesting distinction. But you also then don't get that reaction of being able to tell how they're doing. We had a lot of stuff happen to our students and to us in the spring and the summer. A lot of our students who left campus last spring said to me that they couldn't meet our synchronous meetings during our normal class time because when they got home, they all of a sudden had these extra jobs. Like their parents were still working, but they were home, and so they had to care for their sibling, their younger sibling, who was now, you know, school shut down. So they were kind of babysitting their little brother, little sister, or helping them with their homework. And so they just couldn't get to these timed meetings. You know, we had the kind of traditional returning students who were taking online courses for the time flexibility. I had one student this spring who got locked out of her house because when she was sitting in her bedroom, she had no Wi-Fi. When she sat in the dining room, people kept talking around her and would walk in and turn on the TV really loud when she was in the synchronous meeting. And so she one day took the meeting on the front porch, and the last other adult in the house left to go do something and locked her out. Like there's just a lot of distractions. There's a lot of things going on. The connection issues, I think we all had some connection issues in the spring with you and somebody else, and maybe the kids also all trying to be online and Zoom meetings at the same time. Some of us had a kind of a delicate work-home life balance anyway. And now that everything is happening in the same physical space, it's really hard to manage to control all of those things. And I think that we need to be conscious of giving the students as much as we can and addressing their concerns and experiences with care, but by the same token, finding some kind of boundaries. With my office being in the guest room right now, like I walk by here and I think I should check my email and I think I should respond to that student and I should create that video and I should do all of it right now. And so you know, those things are happening and kind of chipping away at the rest of the day. So here are some questions for you all, because these are the things that are going to happen at Lamar this fall. How do you keep the students engaged? And I have some colleagues who do this beautifully, but I'm not sure that I'm them. I mean, I'm sure I'm not. But how do you do this with really large sections? So say you have 50, 80, 100 students, how do you manage a discussion board or a bunch of discussion boards? How do you manage to reply to them in a timely manner? How do you manage to keep them engaged? And, you know, thank goodness for Hawks tools where I can send the email to the 30 students who haven't yet taken the quiz. But if they all write back and they all require something, like how much time is that on email, and how do we set boundaries for that? Those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about. My chair came out and asked me a couple of weeks ago if I would essentially double the size of my fall section since it was going to be asynchronous online. And I was like, I don't think I can manage that many students. I just can't. So we found other ways to kind of put a few students in lots of different sections and up everybody's enrollment by just a couple, as opposed to dumping 25 more or something in my class or 50 more in my class. But I think these are real questions. So I have said a lot, and I said it really fast because I can't see you, so I can't slow down. But there's my contact information. I'll pause there and we'll hit the Q&A and hopefully have some good conversation. I see some things popping up in the chat, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jensen Ballin, for that presentation. One idea that just popped up into the chat, Professor Otis says, at my college, that something else popped up. At my college, our online classes have times on the schedule for meetings, so we're fortunate that way. For what it's worth, I'm concerned that still may not work, so I talked to a faculty member who suggested for purely asynchronous classes to set up 2 tutoring sessions, one set and one fixed for voluntary meetings. I hope that helps a little as an idea.
Yeah, I had set out like a poll, a time poll, a doodle poll, and asked them when they could meet, and they all agreed on a time, and then I had one student show up. So yeah, I think the synchronous times can work for some. I think that we're going to do a lot of, I had a colleague call me last week and tell me that they were having trouble uploading 1 hour long videos to Blackboard. And I said, why are you uploading hour-long videos? And he was like, what do you mean? That's what I would do in class. And I said, I think the students will find them more useful if you break them into smaller chunks. So maybe that's the other thing, is to think about smaller meetings and like reasonable times. I don't know. That's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. Another comment. I thought with my small class sizes, this would be easier to find a time that all students could meet. However, if you have some students working during the day and some for night shift and others having only one computer that is shared with family, it still is so difficult. I will offer office hours times Tuesday and Thursday morning and Monday and Wednesday afternoon and Friday by appointment. Students have to come to at least 1 office hour each week.
I love that. So then you get to see them all. That's fantastic. I love that.
Definitely. That would definitely help.
And you get a chance then to check in with them and check in on their mental health and their well-being too, as opposed to just getting emails. I love that.
A question now. Would you suggest chat or breakout rooms if we don't have a discussion board? Trying to think of an alternative to the connection.
Yeah, I have not had that option. My course for fall was also already set to be asynchronous. I think I would really love to try breakout rooms. I really love group work when we're in class, especially for the first year courses, because I want to give them something that's kind of on the upper end of what I'm comfortable with them being able to do, but they can do in a group of 3 or 4. And so if I could get them into a Zoom meeting and put them in groups of 4 and have them report out, I think that would be fantastic. And it would get them to see each other more too.
Definitely. From Professor King, I set up regular virtual class meetings and open office hours. I let the class meetings run as long as the students needed, but limited task skills, content-specific videos to less than 15 minutes max. Most were around 5. Office hours were open at least an hour.
So how do you, if you're going to stay as long as they want you to, how do you ever get to anything else? Or how do you get to like your next class? Because we have people who are teaching 4 and 5 classes for some of our instructors, and I would love to be able to do that. I just don't know how my sanity would handle that with balancing getting to other students.
Yeah, we would love to hear, Professor King, if you're still here and want to elaborate a little bit more. Question from Professor Louie. How did you find that being asynchronous affected engagement and success?
So I was really pleased, actually. I was not sure how the course was going to turn out. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to connect with them, or that I would have a lot more students who disengaged, who didn't complete, who straight up failed because they didn't have access to me. And the grades turned out really, really strong, actually. I think that maybe the fact that I was emailing them back pretty much at all hours helped that, because they felt like they always had access to me. But the asynchronous thing actually worked a ton better than I thought it would. So I was definitely one of those diehard people who wanted to always be face-to-face with my students and always wanted to be synchronous. But I found the asynchronous actually had a lot of pluses. I really liked being able to take one person's question and share it with everybody and have that solution just now exist for them. And I think if I had been doing things synchronously, I might not have always remembered to push record when we started a synchronous section, and they might not have had the same access. I think it actually leveled the playing field in terms of access that way.
Thank you so much for that. How much more time do you think it takes to create small videos, make available, make it accessible, answer questions, etc., for an asynchronous class versus a face-to-face class?
Oh, that's really hard. When I was on a roll, I could do, we have a new platform, a new program on campus that links directly to Blackboard called Yuja. It's Yuja. And Yuja will essentially, you film your video somewhere else, you upload into Yuja, and then it will pull them directly into Blackboard, but Yuja will caption them for you. So you have to spot check, but it does a pretty good job captioning. And it links directly to Blackboard, and it has diagnostics, which is something I hadn't ever really thought about. I had a colleague who was like, oh, look, you can tell when they logged out. So you can look at your information from your Yuja videos, and it will show you, like, everybody watched the first 2 minutes, but nobody watched the last 4. And I'm like, oh, I guess either nobody really cared about what this problem did, or they all got it after I said this certain thing, and the rest of it was me babbling. And so I learned a lot more from the diagnostics in Blackboard and from the diagnostics in Yuja about what content was helpful, so I could be much more efficient. I think it depends a lot on the course. I think the first time you teach a course asynchronously, it probably eats a lot more time. If it's a class you're used to teaching face-to-face, because there's all of this background material you have to create. The other good advice that somebody gave, and my students seem to not mind this at all, I thought they were going to be mad about it, is there are some great YouTube videos. And so I found a couple of channels I really liked. And so when I needed an introductory video about something, I would go and look for those that were already created, because they're already then subtitled, and they're already pretty well vetted. And so I didn't have to make those, and I could use my time to make videos about deeper examples. So I got more efficient pretty quickly. If it's a course you could walk in and teach without a lot of preparation, it's going to take you a ton more time asynchronously than if you were doing it synchronously, because you would do kind of the same thing synchronously you normally did. Set up your document to camera and talk about the content, and you don't have to do captioning and things like that then.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. We even had a comment on that same question. Professor Ogden said, there are so many good professional curated captioned videos out there on common topics for most subjects. I balance using those rather than recreate a lot, and save my video creation for navigating courses, short assignment specific instructional videos, and Lumen Learning OER is a great resource.
Yeah, I don't know, am I allowed to mention a couple of particular YouTube channels, or is that not okay?
Go ahead.
So the one that made me, what was it? It was like an organic chemistry tutorial, but they did great basic math videos, like, because you need all of that stuff when you do chemistry. So they did a lot of really great introduction to exponents and logarithms and things like that. And so that one surprised me, but I used them every time I could after that, because they were beautiful. They were a lot better than some of the other ones that I was finding.
Yeah, there's so many great resources out there. Flipping back to Professor King, who had those open courses that we were wondering about. They said, I set the meetings up in the evenings around work schedules and only one per evening. I run through what we are working on for our weekly learning modules, review rubrics, content notes, etc. They teach English, so explicate poems online, demonstrate writing, run mini writing workshops, basically treat the virtual class like face-to-face courses as much as possible. They even said they can have over 100 students per semester, and I'm still able to finagle the time without losing what is left of her mind.
Congratulations, that's awesome. And I'm totally stealing some of your tips.
I love that. Do you require attendance to synchronous meetings?
So we actually just had a really big discussion about this in my department. When I'm teaching asynchronously, the discussion boards count as their attendance. It's their checking in during the week. What we've decided for classes that have synchronous times and synchronous meetings, and this is an experiment, this is the first time we're trying it, so you ask me in 6 months, is that the students have to attend at some minimum number per week, at least 2 of the 3 meetings per week. And if you miss it, the video will get posted. You have to write a 1-paragraph summary of the video within a week of having missed. So they're going to require attendance. We're going to try to take attendance of those synchronous meetings because the students are signing up for them knowing what time they're supposed to be meeting, and we're hoping that means that they can actually get there and have access. And we do have, for all of the courses, I don't think I'm about to lie, for all of the courses that are meeting synchronously, there is an asynchronous option. So the students could have registered for an asynchronous online only option. So we're hoping.
That's great. There was a comment on that question as well that someone else's university was not allowing synchronous courses because of like various reasons people would have to not be there. So that's a very interesting thing to think about for the fall. Another piece of advice from Professor Ngoma: for large classes, you could break students into small groups and handle student issues by group rather than individually.
Yeah.
I like that. For a question from Professor Inman, what % of final grade was based on big stakes testing?
This is also a conversation that we had. So especially for the first year math courses, the only one of them, which is really a sequential course, is pre-calculus. Those are all of our pre-engineering students and our STEM students, and those are the ones who really, really have to know that content deeply when they go on. Most of the other courses are fundamentals and building block courses. So our pre-business majors, for instance, are the ones that I had this summer, and so I don't care so much that they memorized everything. I'm going to get in trouble for that. So all of the exams were open for at least 48 hours. They had a class period to do them once they logged in. So they would have like an hour and a half to do it. They could start it any time before the deadline. And they were open notes. And so if I remember right, I think 15% of their final grade was quizzes. There were 2 quizzes per week. 20% on an exam and 20 or 25% on the final. So it was pretty significant. And then 15 to 20% on the discussions. And I know that doesn't add to 100, but I can't remember what I'm missing. So it was, I mean, the testing part was pretty significant as well. Oh, Hawks. I don't know how I missed the homework category. The homework category was also about 15%. So it was a significant amount on like standard testing.
Thank you. Another question from Professor Louie: where did you post video responses to questions so everyone could find them? Do you email them or post them in the class?
So I did both. I tried to email specifically back to the student who had asked, and then I also posted them under that week's Blackboard, and I would try to put up an announcement that said, hey, I did some homework problems out of 7.3 because I saw lots of you had questions about that. You'll find them in the week 4 content.
Awesome. Another professor said that they created their own YouTube channel and store their videos there, then link to Blackboard, which also helps for adaptability via YouTube.
Yeah, lots of people are doing that too. I hadn't figured that out, and usually logs right into Blackboard. I know lots of people using YouTube. I think it's great.
Definitely. As you look ahead to the fall, is there anything you're looking to try in your classes that is new for you or an improvement from spring and summer?
The synchronous meetings are new for most of our instructors. We didn't really do that in the spring, and we didn't do that at all over the summer. So I'll be interested to see how, because our courses are coordinated, how the ones that were scheduled synchronous versus the scheduled asynchronous, how those students kind of compare and how they come out. We have a little more time in the fall. I have a little more time to plan. So one of the things I was not able to do in the spring and definitely wasn't able to do in the summer is let students work ahead. I hope to be able to let them kind of work a little bit more independently. So when we have students who know that there's a problem, I think I'll also, if I can do that, we'll be a little more prepared for when students do have issues, because at some point somebody's going to get sick, either a student or a family member, and that just allows me to have a little more flexibility and grace with those students, because I know what's coming next and I can figure out how to kind of shuffle things for him or her.
Thank you. A question from Professor Ludwig: students being logged in online does not mean that they're engaged. How do you deal with that?
That's a great question. Well, it's one of the reasons I actually like the asynchronous, is because I can see whether or not. So Hawks has a great built-in, but I'll come back to that. But I like the asynchronous because I can see like the student watched 4 pieces of 4 different videos, but they didn't watch any one video, and now they're emailing me where they're with lots of questions. Well, either I wasn't clear in the videos, which is entirely possible, or they didn't watch them all the way through, and that would have been helpful, right? So it gives me some information about how to engage them and what kind of engagement they're doing. Hawks, if you look at time by assignment, also tells you like how long they spent on an assignment. And I don't know, either Kayla or Joanna can tell you how much dead time the students get before they are like automatically not counted as active anymore. There's a little buffer there, but it's not a very big one in terms of it counting towards their time on task.
Yes, so that is a 10 minutes of inactivity. So if a student is just, opening practice, stepping away, and hoping to get a lot of credit for spending time there, it won't count that. So after 10 minutes, it will stop counting that inactive time.
So if you were thinking about something like, you either have to complete these many sections or at least this much time in Hawks practice or this much time in Learn, Hawks will log them out after a certain amount of time. And I think that's helpful as well, because then it's a lot harder for them to kind of rig the system. They would have to know what they're doing in order to rig the system. And at that point, they may as well just do the work.
Awesome. A question from Professor Akumabua. Has anyone tried late night / wee hours of the morning for meetings, especially since lots of young people are up in the wee hours and maybe some work during the day?
I have not. I don't function at that time. But I do have colleagues who I know run office hours. This isn't super late, but like at 8 p.m. or something like that. Again, by 8 p.m., I'm mush. My brain is jello and I can't function. Now, if they wanted to meet me at 6 a.m., I would be totally fine. And some students did ask for super early morning hours, and that was much easier. Anybody tried that? Like a 1 a.m. office hour or something?
I would love to hear if anyone did. Please put that in the chat and Q&A, and I'll definitely be
super interested.
Out. In the meantime, do you have proctored exams? And if so, how are they handled?
We decided not to. As a group, we decided that we would allow them to be open notes and that we would not worry about proctoring them. The students have to have, if they're going to use notes, if they're going to rely on the notes heavily, the exams are long enough that they would have to have things pretty well organized, and they would not be able to go and watch a video about something and come back. The other setting that we have in the Hawks for the web test is that once you start an exam, you can't pause it and come back to it. So once you sit down, like their final, they had 2.5 hours. Once you sit down for your 2.5 hours, you can't pause it, go watch a 15-minute video, come back, unpause it, and finish the exam or something like that. So we decided that proctoring was kind of nightmarish with the software that we had available, and we didn't want to do that. And we also had students who had so many constraints, like lots of other people have said, where they're working days or they're working nights, and then you would have to find a time where somebody, if you were having them, I know some colleagues who are putting their students in Zoom classrooms and proctoring the exams that way, and I couldn't do it because I'd have to be on Zoom 24 hours a day or something.
Yeah, going back to that wee hours in the morning class idea, Professor Otis commented, I know someone who had students on the Pacific Rim and had super early hours. I have told students generally when I will check messages and have had some evening chat sessions arranged, but not video to late hour. And then another professor said that she's done one at 11 p.m. That's really late.
Ooh,
wow.
That's awesome.
Go
you.
All right. Let's see. Someone said Zoom can take attendance for you if you are teaching synchronously. So that's cool.
We're trying to figure that out for Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So if you know how to do that in Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, let me know.
Yeah, definitely message if you know. A quick idea of something that Professor Kobold used to do to draw on relevance is Psychology Around Us. They teach a psychology class. At the start of each class period, face-to-face synchronous, they would ask for a few examples of what students experienced and or witnessed that week that reminded them of psychology. They said it was a great way for students to learn about each other, such as talking about a difficult dynamic at work or a training technique they tried with their dog or something like that.
That's great. I love that.
I love that idea.
I love that when I'm teaching statistics too. There's lots of great ways to, like, what kind of statistics did you see this week? What kind of bad graphical representations did you see? There's lots of great ways to do that. That's a great idea.
Definitely. Let's see. I think we only have a few more questions. So if anyone has any more, please put those in. Otherwise, we will be done soon. Someone asked, have you ever used Desmos for practice and immediate feedback? There are also options where students can see each other's responses.
I have not. The Blackboard Collaborate Ultra has a built-in whiteboard feature, and I've used that a couple of times, but it's pretty awful. Desmos is way prettier. They really want us focusing our meetings on Blackboard and not on Zoom. So we're a little bit cornered there. They really want the students to be able to log into their learning management system, just click a button, end up in Collaborate, and have everything there, and Collaborate will also record and all those good things. So I don't know how to do a lot of the add-ins in Collaborate. I think there's a lot more flexibility in other platforms.
Awesome. Well, I think I'd like to end it on this comment that I really like from Professor Ogden. For discussion boards, I break students into smaller response groups at the start of the semester and keep them in these groups throughout the semester. I recreate the threads for each board, and students are required to respond to their group thread, interacting with the same 5 to 6 students each week, and are invited to post in other threads if they want to.
Oh, nice. That way you really form a little cohort. I like that. Clever.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. We are out of time, so we will be ending it there. Thank you so much again to Dr. Jensen Vallon for that presentation and all of those responses to your questions. If anyone has any other questions, please direct them to us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. We will be emailing you a link to view this webinar on demand. Thanks again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.